Poll question, McLovin, before we get to Ron Howard.
We put up the MVP question again. Cam Newton is blowing away Tom Brady for MVP, so we might have to switch it up. I was thinking, would you rather be a great director or a great actor? But we can discuss later.
Oh, wow. Well, we could start there with Ron Howard, actor, producer, director. You've done everything. What gave you the most enjoyment?
Directing does. I mean, I really love being at the middle of the whole creative process, and I like to work in a really collaborative way. So for me, I have my own ideas. Sure, I come to work prepped and ready to sort of have a foundation, a plan for the day, for the scene, whatever it is we're trying to accomplish that day. But it's exciting for me when the creative problems pop up to be at the middle of this swirl, and then there's a real thrill when something clicks in and makes sense to me, and we go and it works. It's really thrilling. It's also great. We had our premiere for In the Heart of the Sea last night, and it played really well. Well, as a director, that makes for a good night.
Last time you acted was when?
Well, it depends what you count acting. So I appeared as myself in Arrested Development, the new episodes of Arrested Development. And that's really the first time I've been on camera, because I'm actually the uncredited announcer on that show, narrator on that show. But I thought, oh man, I have lost all my gears. I have no control over what I'm doing. And all my scenes were with Jason Bateman. And he's so cool. I was so grateful because it was like having a rock to hang on to. And even playing myself, you still have to remember the lines, hit a rhythm, find the beats, blah, blah, blah. And the director's giving you notes and you're trying this, that, and the other. And I thought, I got nothing. And by day 3, I kind of remembered that, kind of a little bit of what I was doing. So if I was going to seriously act again, I'd need to get into a workshop or something.
But you never wanted to do what Hitchcock did, where you could do a little cameo in your own movie?
No, my wife is that for me. It's just worked out that way. She's not an actress. She doesn't even particularly like doing it. But we met in high school, and the first movie that I was making, it was sort of serious. It was a short film. I was going to enter it in the Kodak Teenage Filmmakers Contest. And it was a one-reeler category, and this is Super 8. So you had a cassette of film that lasted 3 minutes and 24 seconds. The object of this exercise was you put it in the camera, you exposed it, you turned it in, they processed it and evaluated it. So most people did animation because that's a thing that you can control. But I did a live action with my dad, who's an actor, Rance Howard, my brother Clint, who's an actor, and it was a kind of a Western thing. I cheated. I got to sneak on the back lot of a Western set at a studio, and I needed a saloon girl. So, I said, Cheryl, do you want to be the saloon girl? We hadn't been dating that long, but she came, and all she had to do was stand off to the side and kind of wink while these two had this goofy showdown. Anyway, I came in second. That felt pretty lucky. We kept dating. That was going great. I always needed people to fill in, cheap extras, cheap talent. She would always do it. And suddenly my career started to take off, and I became superstitious about it. So sometimes she has a line of dialogue, sometimes not. But you can, if you know who you're looking for, you can always find Cheryl Howard.
How popular were you in high school?
I was
famous.
I was famous. I was famous but in a way that attracted fights. There was a lot of, I played B basketball. That was for the guys who weren't tall enough to play varsity at John Burroughs High School in Burbank. And, they would play the Andy Griffith. If I had a shooting a foul shot, they'd play the Andy Griffith theme song. Da-dun-dun, da-da-dun-dun-dun, miss it, O.P. And so... Wow. There was kind of a harassment. When I would go back to school, there would always be a couple of weeks of sort of staking out your territory. And sports helped me with that. I mean, it was a kind of an equalizer. I wasn't great, but, I was kind of co-captain of that team. I was good, and I was a starter. I was good enough to sort of, to have another, role, a function at the school. I also loved journalism. So I was co-editor of the school paper. So I got in there and kind of straddled both of those worlds. But I wasn't popular in some sort of social way, but I was also not that interested in that. I wasn't really trying. I liked, I already knew I wanted to be a director. I was kind of always had sort of a narrow vision and kind of keep the eye on the prize.
But how old were you when you got Happy Days?
Well, I did the pilot when I was 17, and the show didn't sell yet. But I did it because, admittedly, I'd already been accepted to USC Film School, so I was a senior in high school, and but my draft number was 41, and that was a bad number.
Yeah.
And there were no more deferments. And I honestly said, well, I don't really want to fight. I don't really want to go to Canada. I really want to be a director. But somehow I think Paramount Studios and ABC will figure out how to keep me out of the jungle if I'm on their TV show.
If you're that good.
And so Nixon did away with the draft. That show didn't sell. It was a non-issue. I went to film school, but I was in a movie called American Graffiti, which wound up being this kind of phenomenal hit. And it was about the 60s. And ABC went back and said, now we need to do a show, about the 50s or 60s. And Gary Marshall, who had created it, said, well, matter of fact, we have it. And the same guy who was in the movie you like that you want to copy was in our show. But do you know the bastard still made me audition again?
You had to audition?
I had to go in and test again for my own part.
Wow.
It's a rough world.
Do you wonder what you would be like if you had success with, when you were on with Andy Griffith, Mayberry, and then you have Happy Days? At that age of being in Hollywood, it seemed like you were fortunate that there was insulation there of being a childhood star, as opposed to
the
if you were doing
thing?
it now.
Oh man, I mean, the transparency is kind of mind blowing. It's it's intimidating in the extreme. It has to be. I mean, we're not going to talk about it, but I can only think of 2 or 3 things that could have been horrible if they'd come out. But everybody does embarrassing, dumb stuff, and it's. It's very hard on this generation. But I always say, turns out we didn't need the government to give us 1984 and Big Brother. We're just doing it ourselves because we like the other things about it, all the convenience and all the access.
We also talked about you yesterday when we were looking at Bryan Cranston, who I think, if you look at Malcolm in the Middle and Breaking Bad, 2 iconic shows, but 2 diametrically opposed personalities to be able to pull that off. Yeah. You were on 2 iconic shows. But are you playing yourself just grown up with Happy Days?
I mean, I don't have that. As an actor, I don't think I ever had that sort of range like a Bryan Cranston. Like there's another level of talent, of creativity, and I don't think I ever intuitively. I think this is why I really wanted to be a director. I was as an actor, I was really solid. I was really dutiful. I was committed. And in certain instances I could be good, but I didn't think I had that X factor. And now having directed people like Tom Hanks and Russell Crowe and Cate Blanchett and Jim Carrey in comedy, I mean, and going on, it's they have it. Bryan Cranston has it. Creatively, I feel much more additive to the whole process as a director. But you have it. You have it behind the lens. They have it in front of. The camera. I mean, now, there's a difference, but it would be interesting. Now, I directed Rob Reiner about 10 or 12 years ago in something. He was a great actor, and a comedy actor, and then became an outstanding A-list director, of which he still is. But he moves back and forth, and he told me, he said, you ought to try it again because you'd be surprised. Some of that stuff will rub off on you. He said, now that he acts, he feels like he's much better than he was when he was, sort of a younger actor who had not been around. The people of this unbelievable caliber.
We'll continue with Ron Howard. We'll talk about the movie In the Heart of the Sea, and we've just seen the trailers, and the trailer's scary enough to keep me out of a boat.
Look, it was a remarkable directorial opportunity, and I thought it offered audiences something, really, really different. A lot of scope. It's a big screen movie experience, but it's based on true events, and is very, very emotional, and so. This combination of things, it's a little bit of a cousin to a movie I did 20 years ago, Apollo 13, and it's in the sort of range. I mean, this has, In the Heart of the Sea has a lot more action, and the situation is tense. The other interesting thing to me is that it's surprising when you read the real events, that, sort of how little things have changed even since 1820 when this ship was rammed by a whale and sunk. But why was the ship out there? That was the oil industry. that was the energy industry of its time, hunting whales, you know, and they were out there not because they were on some kind of romantic voyage or exploration. You know, they were trying to feed their families and, you know, answer to the marketplace.
All right, we'll come back. We'll talk to Ron Howard about that, his love of the Los Angeles Dodgers, the NBA. And the Danettes get to be fanboy. Each guy gets to ask you one question. They didn't run it by me, though, Ron.
Okay.
Just so you know.
I'm fully warned.
So
I'm prepped.
Yeah, this could be really bad. I expect it to be really bad.
The answers could be really bad, too.
No. The answers would be good. The questions are going to be awkward, that's for sure. All right, coming up on 17 after the hour, we'll continue with Ron Howard. Also, Reggie Miller will join us. Luke Kuechly stops by, and Allen Robinson, the great receiver from the Jaguars, will join us as well. This is the Dan Patrick Show. What do we have here, Seton? Sleep number? My sleep number setting, by the way, is 60. I didn't get to sleep in my sleep number bed last night because I'm here in New York. And that's probably why I was a little bit cranky. This is a live read, by the way, just so you know.
Okay.
This is how we... If you want to direct me here, you can.
You're doing well so far.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, but you're doing it well.
It's a sleep number bed, and it's you know better sleep. It's going to change your life, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know how well you slept last night, but I can change the way you sleep.
I've got a movie opening, so I did not so good.
Yeah. Some restless nights there. Come to a Sleep Number store, see all the innovative gifts for better sleep. Right now, you can save 30% on a temperature balancing pillow. Actually, I'm auditioning in case Ron needs a voiceover guy here. No better sleep at Sleep Number beds, and Sleep IQ technology only available at any of the 475 Sleep Number stores nationwide. Find the one nearest you. You can call 1-800-SLEEP-25, 1-800-SLEEP-25, and make sure you tell them we sent you. Ron Howard is with us. The movie In the Heart of the Sea. It's in theaters this Friday. It's rated PG-13. In case you're not familiar, you should be, with some of the movies here. Let me embarrass you here, Ron. American Graffiti, Grand Theft Auto, more American Graffiti, Night Shift, Splash, Cocoon, Backdraft, Cinderella Man, Parenthood, Beautiful Mind, Cowboys and Aliens, Frost Nixon, Da Vinci Code, Rush. You're pretty good. That's pretty good batting average there.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're Ted Williams. You're more than Ted Williams, so.
I love it. And I like all kinds of movies. And, you know, because I grew up on TV series, The Andy Griffith Show and Happy Days that you mentioned. In between was a failed show starring Henry Fonda called The Smith Family. So from 1960, when I was 6 years old, to 1980, when I was 26, I was under contract to a television show for like 17 and a half out of those 20 years. And so when I knew I was going to have a career as a director, it was a dream come true. But the other thing I knew is I didn't want to be typecast. I didn't want to have the brand. He does comedies,
yes,
or he does thrillers, or he does quirky, esoteric stuff, or whatever. I really wanted to be able to work in different genres and different styles and tell different stories in different ways.
What's the one that surprised you?
Probably the biggest surprise. Oh man, well, Apollo 13 surprised me because The Right Stuff had been out about 12 years before, and it was a fantastic movie, wonderful. No one went. So I was making this movie because I loved it. Brian Grazer, my partner at Imagine, believed in it. Tom Hanks, loved space. We were pals, and here we were on this adventure. But in my heart of hearts, I kind of thought, people don't care about space. And so when that movie actually turned out to be as commercial as it was, in addition to it, people being well reviewed and liked, that really surprised me. It was a great surprise.
You love sports.
Sometimes the surprises go the other way.
It's true. But you love sports, but you haven't embraced that sports movie.
I haven't. Well, Cinderella Man was
boxing, yes.
And Rush, which I didn't know really anything about Formula One. I'd been to a race or two because George Lucas is a huge F1 fan, and he invited me once or twice when I was in Europe. So it's about the characters and the drama. Team sports is that's a hard thing to convey because the actors aren't athletes. I mean, they're not professional athletes. They're not great. They can move, and some of them are athletic.
So you like the singular, where it's a boxer, it's a race car driver.
So far, those have been the only ones I felt confident enough to tackle. But Bull Durham is a great movie, and fantastic, and that's that's a team sport movie. It's baseball. And Billy Crystal's movie 61 is so well done, and that was on a TV budget. Kind of unbelievable.
And you being a Dodger fan, is there a movie that like you could wrap your arms around that was Dodger related? Like Sandy Koufax, to me, he would never let you in.
Yeah.
But there's that mystery around Sandy Koufax.
Well, he was my man. I
mean, he's Greta Garbo of athletes.
Yeah. Well, he was. That was unbelievable. I got tickets to go to the '65 World Series. We were in the bleachers, and my dad and I were there out in the left field bleachers. He wasn't pitching that day. I think Claude Osteen was pitching, and but he was running in the outfield. And I was there early enough to yell, "Hey, Sandy!" And he made eye contact, man, and he waved to me. I loved it.
Did he know?
No. But I later at an award event many years later, that was a kind of a career thing. Henry Winkler, who doesn't know all that much about baseball, but I think he knows Sandy Koufax is Jewish. And I loved him and to talk about Sandy all the time. And he got me an autographed ball from Sandy. That was a highlight.
Last time a sporting event made you cry?
Oh, I got a great picture. I got a great picture for my birthday a couple of years ago. I got the guys. We have a home run pool. It's not a sophisticated fantasy thing. It's just home runs. We've been doing it about 25 years. And the home run pool, we all gathered at Dodger spring training, and I was just wandering around with my little camera, and I got this great picture of Kershaw throwing, and Koufax is watching him. Kershaw started that game, and it was really interesting to see Sandy there, kind of chatting to somebody else, but keeping an eye on Kershaw.
Did you get him to sign it?
No.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I should make it
get him blown up.
Yeah.
Last time a sporting event made you cry?
Oh man. I get more moved by the commercials. The music and all of that stuff. No, I get emotionally involved, but I'm not as much of a. Yeah, I'm a Dodger fan. I'm a Laker fan. I'm transplanted to the East. I favor the Mets, which bugs my son Reed, who's a Yankee guy. I like to see the Knicks do well, but I love the sport. So that's why. Watching Bryant Gumbel's show or something, it's the stories around the sport that I find really moving. 30 for 30s. Those will make me cry.
Yeah.
Almost every one. But watching the game, as awesome, as exciting, as thrilling as it is, I've never really gotten that emotionally.
Oh, you're not
involved
invested in it that way.
Not in that way. Yeah. It's more this, but that's one of the things I love about baseball is that because it moves at that pace, it's almost always a will he, won't he dramatic moment, and that's good storytelling, and it's always these kind of do or die plays. And of course, the more you know about the players, if you happen to know that person, just got divorced or has a bad leg or, or is in a horrible slump or it's a contract year or one of those things, makes it, more, there's just a little more tension while you're waiting to see if he makes the catch or not.
The movie is In the Heart of the Sea. It's directed by Ron Howard. Hits theaters this Friday, December 11th. And Chris Hemsworth is back with you, who was,
he was
brilliant in Rush.
Well, thank you. He's great. He's a great guy. And look, he's Thor. He's Snow White. And he's the huntsman.
He's the tough guy to get the photo op where you're standing next to him.
Well, yeah, he pretty much dwarfs everybody. But he's he loves acting. He loves movies. He's just got a lot of heart and talent. And he demonstrated that to me in Rush, a role that he won, because I wasn't necessarily convinced that he could do it. And then he brought me In the Heart of the Sea, which is basically the origin story for Moby Dick. I mean, I didn't know that Herman Melville was inspired by a real event that had happened 30 years before when he wrote Moby Dick. And this is that event. So we're not doing Moby Dick. I wouldn't want to remake that classic, but we are using that mythology as the real kind of crisis point for our movie. And if you've seen the TV spots, we didn't exaggerate that whale. That is how big that whale was, and it was just a force of nature coming after these guys.
A fanboy over here, my fanboys here, the Danettes, have a question. They're allowed to have one question for you, Ron, okay?
There's strict rules around here.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Well, I know these guys color outside the lines, and so that's the problem here.
Okay.
All right, Paulie, I'll start with you. Your question for Ron Howard.
Now, as everyone knows, you directed Night Shift, which is one of the great comedies, probably one of the more underrated comedies of all time. I love that movie.
Thank you.
It was one of Henry Winkler was in Michael Keaton's first roles.
Right.
How much did he ad lib in that movie? And did you see him more going forward as a comedy actor, or a serious actor? He's done both.
Well, he was a lot. It was very well written by Lowell Gans and Babaloo Mandel, and that was the first time I'd worked with them. And later we did Parenthood and Splash and other movies together. So the character was well written, but Michael absolutely had a green light. So, we'd get a scripted take or two, and he had those improvisational skills were there. And basically it was, here's your take, Michael, or two. And he just could go. And Henry Winkler just loved the whole change of suddenly being kind of the straight man here. And he adored what Michael was doing. But it was explosive. It was crazy. The studio didn't know quite what they were seeing. They were, Brian Grazer, that was Brian Grazer's idea, my partner at Imagine, which is based on a real event. Somebody was running a prostitution ring out of the New York City morgue. Brian discovered this little news clipping, and so it's it's not a true story. From there, we entirely invented it. But there's New York for you, an inspiration for all things.
All right, Seaton.
I'm actually going to do a memory and a question, if you don't mind.
Outside the lines, you said.
Yeah, see, I'm going to break the rules right straight away. I have a pretty vivid memory as a child watching Happy Days with my siblings, and Richie Cunningham calls his father Bucko, and all of us bursting into tears and saying, "Why would he say that to his daddy? Oh, the Bucko, it's so mean." So I don't know if you were aware of what a crushing moment that scene actually was, but it stuck with me 30 years later.
I would say your family doesn't have much of a sense of humor.
Yeah, I know. Why did he say that to his daddy?
Maybe you were taking Happy Days just a wee bit too seriously, but I'm glad it reached you in that way.
Okay, so that dovetails perfectly into my next point here, in that you taught a very valuable life lesson in Happy Days. That is, 72 teeny weeny beers will get you just as hungover as normal sized beers.
Yes.
There were a lot of very powerful life lessons. Were you aware that was also happening too?
Well, I one would hope. Well, I'll tell you. I'll tell you a story about sitcoms. Here's the thing, and one time, 15, 20 years ago, our family. I have 4 kids. We were all somehow it was one of those days where there were issues that were kind of boiling over, resentments about the parents. Cheryl and I were trying to work things out. There was maybe Cheryl and I didn't agree entirely. One of those tense moments. And for some reason, there was a show. I don't even know what sitcom it was, but it was a rerun of like a sitcom from the 80s or the early 90s or something that was on. And it dawned on us that the episode was dealing with our thing. And as sort of broad and zany and bright colored and all of it was, that show, we all stopped and watched it, and it made a difference. And I've always felt like no matter what genre you're working in, there's a lesson in that. It can be a Saturday morning cartoon, it can be a true story brought to the big screen, it can be a broad comedy, it can be a fantasy, but you should work hard at those themes. Stories aren't entertaining, whatever the genre, unless there's an idea behind it. And people work really hard on these shows, all of them. And whoever worked really hard on that episode from that 80s middle-of-the-road sitcom, I was really grateful for that day.
McLovin, we're talking to Ron Howard. The movie is In the Heart of the Sea. You can see it Friday everywhere this December 11th.
Okay, I'm sure you've heard of this before, but Cocoon, 1985. Wilford Brimley, according to my research, is 50 years old. How did that happen? Weren't you worried that he was too young to play one of the old guys in Cocoon?
Well, I met him, and
that's the question you have for
Ron
Howard?
I'm obsessed with this guy.
Well, Wilford is an unbelievably talented guy, great improvisational actor, brilliant. And I met him, and I didn't really know how old he was, but he then said, "Look, I'm not as old as these other people." I didn't know he was only 50. But let me dye my hair and let me just come back. And didn't really audition, but he created the look, and he came back with the clothing. And the producers, Richard and Lily Zanuck and David Brown and I just thought he could do it, and he certainly did. And he also, he brought a kind of another level of authenticity or something to that movie that I'll always be really, really grateful for. There's a great scene people like where he and his grandson are fishing, and I always like to give credit to the fact that Wilford said, "Could I improvise this scene?" And even though it's a drama, I said yes. Let's try it, and it was one of the really touching scenes that I've ever been involved with.
All right, Fritzy.
What is the most disturbing or awkward thing you witnessed while on the set of Happy Days, and did any romances develop outside of Joni Loves Chachi? And I had a big crush on Pinky Tuscadero. I don't know if that would be one of the people involved.
Yep. Okay. I'm sorry you and Pinky can't find each other. She's really, really terrific. She's got a lot of energy.
Was there inappropriate stuff going on Happy Days?
We were. No, not that I was particularly aware of. It was the 80s, but no, there really wasn't. Look, we were a little bit like, once Henry took off as Fonzie, and that was like a phenomenon. I mean, you just have to. TV was a little different then because there were only the 3 networks. And when the show took off, it was explosive. It would just kind of take over. So he was, it was like Beatlemania. It was like being in a boy band. Suddenly, being on Happy Days was a little bit like being in a boy band. Now, I was dating and about to get married, but the guys had a little fun.
Ralph Mal, I bet Ralph and Donnie Most probably had some fun.
Those guys had fun. And then they found soulmates, and everybody's happily married with the marriages that came while they were doing the show.
Thanks for being a good sport.
Oh, it's fun.
We appreciate it. The movie is In the Heart of the Sea with Chris Hemsworth. It's based on a true story. The New England fishing vessel, the Essex, and surviving after being attacked by a whale, and it inspired Moby Dick, Herman Melville. McLovin is a huge Moby Dick fan, and so he was like questioning just the authenticity of this. So
yeah, I said, "Where's Ahab?" And then I realized that wasn't the deal.
Yeah, well, people going to see Moby Dick, that's a mislead. But again, I thought this was something kind of original, and because it's it's the inspiration for that, yes, but it's also its own standalone story of survival that's pretty amazing to me.
In the Heart of the Sea this Friday in theaters everywhere. It's rated PG-13. Thank you, Ron,
Thanks
for
a lot. Fun.
coming downstairs.